Hello everyone, welcome back. This video is going to be a little bit different than plants and things like that, but it's directly related to those in that it's a weather video, specifically talking about dew point versus humidity slash relative humidity slash humidity percentage, whatever you want to call it, and just describing the differences between the two and why I believe you have been misled all of these years in terms of how you are being told to decipher and find out how humid it actually is outside. There's a lot of misinformation out there, specifically as it relates to meteorologists that you see on television and your local news, national news, and all of the main um, and very popular weather apps and weather reporting stations, whether on your phone or online or just on television in general, how they're basically telling you to look at the wrong thing. And I want to break that down and have you understand better if you're interested in knowing how humid it is outside. What does it actually feel like outside? Am I going to be instantaneously sweating and I will never be able to remove that sweat while I am outside? I want to talk about what that means and what goes into that. So here, I believe the screenshot I have here is National Weather Service describing this, and I believe we should all be using the National Weather Service as our main conduit by which to receive weather information. They are the most well-respected forecasting and just meteorological um, gathering of professionals in the business, in my opinion. And I think it's who we should be looking to for real information about the weather, especially as you dive deep into the data and understanding of it. So, National Weather Service, they have a little blurb here on dew point versus humidity. The dew point is the temperature the air needs to be cooled at constant pressure in order to achieve a relative humidity of 100%. At this point, the air cannot hold more water in the gas form. If the air were to be cooled even more, water vapor would have to come out of the atmosphere in the liquid form, usually as fall or precipitation. The higher the dew point rises, the greater the amount of moisture in the air. This directly affects how comfortable it will feel outside. Many times, relative humidity can be misleading. For example, a temperature of 30 and a dew point of 30 will give you a relative humidity of 100, but a temperature of 80 and a dew point of 60 produces a relative humidity of 50%. It would feel much more humid on the 80-degree day with 50% relative humidity than on the 30-degree day with 100% relative humidity. This is because of the higher dew point. So if you want a real judge of just how dry or humid it will feel outside, look at the dew point instead of the relative humidity. The higher the dew point, the muggier it feels. And they have a little scale down here at the bottom. And I'll actually show you a little bit better of a scale later on. But this is the main difference between dew point and humidity. The dew point is on an absolute scale, 0 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And you will always be able to look at that dew point degree Fahrenheit scale and you will always be able to understand what that means. Low dew points, it's going to be very dry. High dew points, it is going to be very muggy. That's absolute. That's always the case. That's never changing. That's static. That will go on forever. You will 100% be able to tell the dryness or mugginess by looking at the dew point. Anything above 65, according to this chart, now everybody feels different things, but anything above 65 is where there's lots of moisture in the air becoming oppressive, and anything below 50 or 55 is considered dry and comfortable. Now I'm going to show you some screenshots coming up of really good examples of why you cannot use relative humidity, humidity percentage, whatever your favorite weather app shows you. You cannot use that as a barrier, or I'm sorry, as a guardrail or a guidepost to decipher how muggy it is outside. Now, this is a little bit hard to see, but this is just from a few days ago. This is weather data from Monday, June 13th, 2022, here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I pulled this from, and this is just a great way by which we can see the differences between relative humidity and dew point. Relative humidity is always relative to the temperature. That's why it's called relative. It's the capability of that air mass to be able to hold a certain amount of water vapor in it. So as the temperature increases, warm air can hold more than cold air can. So that's why it is humidity based on the relative temperature. So it is a sliding scale. You can have 100% relative humidity with 100 degrees. You could have 100% relative humidity at -20 degrees and everything in between. So it all just depends on the temperature. That's why it's relative to that. That's why it is not a good way by which to understand how humid outside or dry outside it is. So for instance, at 2:35, or I think that is, I'm sorry, it is fairly small, but at 2:35 p.m. Eastern Time, the temperature outside was 90, and the dew point was just an incredible 81 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just absurd. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The relative humidity was 75%. 75% relative humidity. Now, a dew point of 81, like I said, I mean, there's people probably watching this video that have never even felt that before. That is ridiculously high, and that is absolutely muggy. It doesn't get much muggier than an 81 degree Fahrenheit dew point. So that's extremely muggy, and no one would really say otherwise to that. But you wouldn't look at a 75% relative humidity and think that's that's just outrageous. That's preposterous. That's just very, very muggy. No one would ever say that at 75% relative humidity. Now, consequently, I think there was a 96. Yeah, I believe right here, if I'm looking at this correctly, again, it's really small, but 6:52 a.m., the temperature was, that might be 73, and the dew point is 72. And that put the relative humidity at about 96% because of how close the dew point was to the temperature. However close these are, you're going to have a greater relative humidity. Remember, because it's relative, it's the amount of air, I'm sorry, it's the amount of moisture in the air relative to the temperature, whereas dew point is just the total amount of moisture in the air, regardless of temperature. So if you're sitting here thinking, wow, 96 degrees, that is just 96% relative humidity, that's unbearable. Yeah, well, it really wasn't. The dew point was only 72. Um, that certainly was not unbearable. It's uncomfortable, but it's not unbearable. Whereas later on, you had a truly unbearable dew point with a relatively kosher relative humidity of 75%. So it's just a good example of the differences between the two. And again, dew point is the total amount, the total measure of water in the air. Just straight up, that's all it is. The total amount of water in the air. Whereas relative humidity is the percent available of that temperature of air to hold water. Now, looking at a different day, I want to say, actually, let me look real quick what day this was. We are looking now from a day, excuse me, earlier this year on January 29th, 2022. Same location, Cincinnati, Ohio. Pretty much the same data set here. This was the coldest day that we had this past winter, the winter from 2021 into 2022. It was the coldest day we had, and we got down to, I believe that says 4 degrees. Sorry, it's really small on my screen. But 4 degrees, And so that was the temperature right here at, let's say, 9:52 a.m. And I believe the dew point here was maybe 1 degree, 2 degrees, something like that. And what that, oh yeah, 9:52 a.m., temperature of 4, dew point of 2. Now look at the relative humidity on that. It was 91%. Again, you're thinking the dead of winter, the coldest day of the year. How could you have a relative humidity of 91%? When you walk outside, there's no moisture in the air. I mean, it's dry as a bone, right? Everyone's hands are cracking and everyone's wearing moisturizer, and so there's just no moisture in the air in the dead of winter. Why is the relative humidity so high? 91%. That's a muggy day, right? Um, that should be a muggy day. That's what, muggy feels like. Well, no, because the dew point was 2. It's at 91% because 2 and 4 are very close together, and as those two numbers of the air temperature and the dew point come together, you're going to have a higher relative humidity. But 2 degrees as a dew point, that is very dry, right? So as I said, it's an absolute scale. Um, Dew point is going to 100% tell you correctly how it feels outside. You would look at that and you would say 2 degrees dew point. That is dry. There's no way in which anyone would ever say anything but that it's dry. So that's just a good way to see here the differences between those two, because in the summertime someone might be saying, oh, they'll look at their phone and their favorite weather app and say it's 91% humidity outside, it's really, really muggy. Well, you could also have 91% relative humidity on that same weather app in the middle of winter, and you're not saying it's muggy. So where does that hold water? And the fact is that it doesn't. You have to 100% look at dew point. So this is just a major PSA for we should not be using relative humidity to say how humid it is outside. What's funny is it's in the name, right? So that's a part of it. The fact that you always want to say, oh, it's so humid outside, and it's in that name, the relative humidity name. So of course it makes a little bit more sense to use it that way. Also, it's a function of history. The first hygrometer that was able to measure relative humidity was built and constructed and designed and sold way before the first mechanism by which to measure dew point came around. So just historically, we have been using relative humidity for longer than dew point, but that doesn't make it right. Just the fact that it's in the name and because it started first doesn't make it right. Yeah, so we really shouldn't be using relative humidity. Now, remember earlier I said I would show a chart here of dew points and what they feel like. This is just subjective. Um, Anyone can come up with this. It's not scientific. And if you just type this into an online search, you'll be able to find a whole bunch of these, dew point graph or something like that. But these are just some adjectives that someone's thrown next to, dew points and what it feels like. But they're pretty good, right? And everybody's body reacts differently, um, regardless of where you're from. Everyone reacts differently to things and everybody feels differently in different dew points and temperatures and whatnot. Um, and sometimes it's based on what you're used to as well. Regardless, as you work up the dew point chart, it becomes more and more uncomfortable. Here, we see pleasant. 56 to 60 becomes comfortable. Anything over 60, we're talking about getting sticky. High 60s is uncomfortable. Low 70s is oppressive. And everything over 76 plus, they didn't even bother going any higher than that, is seen as miserable. Um, So yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And as I said on an earlier video, what was really interesting is with an 81-degree dew point, like I said, it's not even on this chart. It's well into the miserable stage, if you will. And and it's just incredible that we were able to accomplish that. I think they said it was the most humid day that we've had here in Cincinnati in 10 years. And I'm going to pull up a screenshot here to show you something from the National Weather Service for Columbus. Yeah, so take a look at this, and this would have been on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, which was the day after um, Cincinnati had the 81-degree dew point. But National Weather Service out of Wilmington, which covers pretty much all southwest and central Ohio, northern Kentucky, southeast Indiana. We have verified that the dew point at CMH, which I think might be the Columbus International Airport, I am not sure on that, I've never been there, reached 84 degrees at 6:45 p.m., which is a record for Columbus. The previous record we could find in our database was 81, which I mentioned is what Cincinnati had the day prior to this. So an 84-degree dew point in Columbus, Ohio. That is absurd. That is absurd. And coincidentally, I actually followed, obviously, that service on Twitter, but also this very first poster here, Brian McNulty. Follow him on Twitter as well. I think he's a National Weather Service guy out of Miami. But he actually responded to this and said 84 is the record high dew point in Miami too. So just let that sink in. Columbus, Ohio, this week recorded the highest dew point that Miami of Florida has also seen as well. That is just absurd. And I keep trying to say how incredible it is to have that dew point that high. That is extreme mugginess, extreme. Um, and the fact that that's all Miami got as their record as well. And as I said on a video earlier this week, just pull up Miami on any day this summer and you'll see dew points, 76, 77, things like that. But to see it go past 78, 79, 80, you typically don't see it. You typically don't see it in the fact that their record is 84. So they're going to be in the high 70s. So the fact that here in the Midwest we set the same record that they did is just incredible and a testament to the heat wave that we had this week. And oh, by the way, they're talking an even hotter heat wave next week. They're talking 98, 97 with heat indices in the low 120s. So that remains to be seen if that'll happen. But yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to this video. It got much longer than I had anticipated or wanted it to be. But dew point is the method by which you should calculate what it feels like outside. It is not relative humidity because that is a sliding scale. And yeah, leave the comments below, guys, what you think about this and if this makes sense to you or if I need to cover something else. Yeah, or just your thoughts and opinions on this. I know it's kind of a hot take. People don't like to talk a lot about it, and we're just so ingrained to discuss what is the percentage humidity. But in reality, that doesn't tell you anything. So thanks for watching if you made it this far.